The red dust of Mars swirled around Dr. Alan Carter as he carefully brushed away the last layer of soil. His hands, protected by thin gloves designed for the delicate work, moved with practiced care over what appeared to be a smooth metallic surface. After 20 years of searching, he had finally found something that might prove his theories right. "Olivia, come look at this," he called to his graduate student, who was working several feet away. Olivia Martinez hurried over, her eyes widening as she saw what Alan had uncovered. "Is that what I think it is?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement even through the comm system of her spacesuit. "If you think it's proof that Mars once hosted visitors from beyond our solar system, then yes," Alan replied with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Help me clear more of this area." The two worked side by side as the Martian afternoon wore on. The rest of their team soon joined them, including Sam Wilson, the mission engineer who had argued against this particular dig site. "Well, I'll be," Sam said, crossing his arms as he stared down at the object they had uncovered. "Looks like you were right after all, Doc." What lay before them was a sleek, oval-shaped object about 3 feet long. Its surface was a dark metal that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols were etched into its sides in patterns that reminded Alan of star charts. "We need to get this back to the base for proper study," Alan said, already planning the careful extraction. A shadow fell across the dig site as Michelle Brooks, the representative from Universal Exploration Corporation that funded their expedition, approached. "Is this what we've spent millions of credits to find? An old piece of metal?" Her voice was cold and dismissive. "This isn't just metal," Alan explained, trying to contain his frustration. "The composition alone is unlike anything in our database. And look at these markings. They're not random. This is a manufactured object, and I don't think it was made by humans." Michelle frowned. "You always jump to the most extreme conclusions, Dr. Carter. It's probably just debris from an early unmanned mission." "From what mission? No one has ever landed in this region before us," Olivia pointed out. After hours of careful work, they managed to free the artifact from its resting place. Sam designed a special container to transport it safely back to their base, a collection of pressurized domes that had been their home for the past 6 months. That night, as the team celebrated their find, Alan couldn't help but notice something odd about the artifact. Now clean of dust and dirt, its surface seemed to change subtly under different lighting conditions. "Do you see that?" he asked Olivia, pointing to what appeared to be a flowing pattern just beneath the surface. She leaned in closer. "It almost looks like it's moving," she whispered. "Don't tell the others yet," Alan cautioned. "Let's observe it for a few days before making any claims." 2 weeks later, the artifact was secured aboard the Starship Horizon for transport back to Earth. Captain Jack Nelson wasn't happy about the special cargo. "My crew has been reporting strange things," Jack told Alan as they stood in the ship's secure storage bay. "Weird dreams, equipment malfunctions. All started when your rock came aboard." "It's not a rock, Captain," Alan corrected. "And whatever your crew is experiencing, I'm sure there's a logical explanation." Jack didn't look convinced. "Just get it to the Lunar Research Station in one piece. After that, it's not my problem anymore." The journey to Earth's moon took 3 weeks. During that time, Alan spent every available moment studying the artifact. He recorded subtle changes in its surface patterns and energy readings that fluctuated in ways that defied explanation. When they finally arrived at the Lunar Research Station, a team of scientists was waiting for them. The artifact was transferred to a high-security containment chamber where it could be studied safely. "What do you think it is?" asked Ben Howard, one of the lab technicians assigned to help with the research. "My best guess? Some kind of probe," Alan replied. "Sent to our solar system thousands of years ago by an advanced civilization." Ben laughed nervously. "You're not serious." "I've never been more serious in my life," Alan said, his eyes fixed on the artifact. Over the next 3 months, Alan and his team conducted every test they could think of. The artifact resisted all attempts to determine its composition or internal structure. Scans simply couldn't penetrate its surface, and samples couldn't be taken without damaging their tools. This is impossible, Sam complained after another failed attempt. It's like it's actively resisting our efforts. Maybe it is, Olivia suggested quietly. Commander Lisa Patel, head of security for the research wing, increased the guards around the artifact after several unexplained power fluctuations in the facility. Whatever this thing is, she told Alan, it's affecting our system somehow. Alan had noticed it too. Computers near the artifact would occasionally glitch, showing strange symbols similar to those on the object's surface before returning to normal. One night, while working late, Alan noticed something that made his heart race. The patterns on the artifact's surface had changed significantly since their first day at the lunar facility. He pulled up his initial scans and compared them. It's rearranging itself, he muttered in amazement. Just then Olivia rushed into the lab. Alan, look at this. She thrust a tablet toward him showing brain scans she had been conducting on herself and other team members. Our brainwave patterns are syncing with the energy pulses from the artifact, she explained breathlessly. It's like it's trying to communicate with us. Alan looked from the tablet to the artifact and back again. All this time, we thought it was just a relic of some ancient civilization, he said slowly. But what if it's more than that? What if it's actually alive? As if in response to his words, the lights in the lab dimmed momentarily. When they came back on, the surface of the artifact was glowing faintly, pulsing in a rhythm that matched exactly the pattern of Alan's heartbeat. Ancient artifact wasn't just a relic after all, it was waking up. Alan called an emergency meeting the next morning. The entire research team gathered in the conference room adjacent to the lab where the artifact was kept. Security footage from the night before played on the large screen, showing the object's surface glowing and pulsing. This is not just some ancient space junk, Alan said, facing his colleagues. It's responding to us, it's active. Sam crossed his arms, his face a mask of concern. If that thing is active, we need to consider shutting this project down. We have no idea what it's capable of. Shut it down, Olivia protested. This could be the most important discovery in human history. Michelle Brooks, who had arrived at the lunar facility 2 days earlier, stood up. The corporation has invested too much to back out now. We continue as planned, but with extra safety measures. Commander Lisa Patel nodded in agreement. I'm doubling the security detail and implementing containment protocols. No one enters the lab alone anymore. 3 days later, Ben Howard was running standard tests on the artifact. Despite the new protocols, he found himself alone in the lab when the night shift guard stepped out briefly. As Ben moved a scanner over the object's surface, his hand accidentally brushed against one of the symbols. The artifact responded immediately. A low humming filled the room, and the object began to glow brighter than ever before. Ben stumbled backward, knocking over a tray of equipment as a beam of light shot upward from the artifact. The light expanded into a three-dimensional display that filled the room. Stars, planets, and swirling galaxies hung in the air around Ben. He stared in wonder, frozen in place. The security alarms blared. Lisa and her team rushed in, weapons drawn. They stopped short at the sight of the cosmic display. Get Alan Carter in here now, Lisa ordered one of her officers. Alan was asleep when his comm unit buzzed. He answered groggily, but the sleep vanished from his eyes when he heard what had happened. 10 minutes later, he burst into the lab, Olivia and Sam right behind him. It's incredible, Ben said, his face lit by the glow of 1,000 projected stars. I think it's showing us star maps. Alan moved carefully through the display, studying the patterns. These aren't modern configurations, he said after a while. The positions of these stars, they're from thousands of years ago. For the next week, the team worked around the clock to understand what they were seeing. Olivia was the first to notice that certain stars in the display pulsed brighter when people moved near them. It's interactive, she told Alan. Watch. She moved toward one particularly bright point of light, and it expanded, revealing a solar system with several planets. It's like it's trying to show us something specific. Meanwhile, Sam had been monitoring the artifact itself. You need to see this, he called to Alan one day. The surface is changing. Under a microscope, they could see that the artifact was repairing tiny scratches and imperfections. The material seemed to flow like liquid at a microscopic level, then harden again once repairs were complete. "It's healing itself," Alan whispered in amazement. Michelle was not pleased with these developments. "The corporation wants results, not light shows," she complained. "What can this technology do for us?" "We're dealing with something far beyond our understanding," Alan argued. "We need to approach this with caution and respect." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Olivia had been working late, studying brain scans of team members who had been in proximity to the artifact. She noticed that the object's energy emissions changed in response to different thought patterns. On a hunch, she hooked herself up to a neural monitoring device and focused her thoughts directly on the artifact. To her shock, the star map display shifted, zooming in on a specific region she had been curious about. "Alan," she called over the comm, "I think I know how to communicate with it." The next day, they set up an experimental neural interface. Olivia sat in a chair wearing a headset linked to sensitive equipment. The artifact was placed on a table before her. "Just relax and focus your thoughts toward it, like you did before," Alan instructed her. Olivia closed her eyes. The room fell, silent as everyone watched. Slowly, the artifact began to glow. The star map appeared again, but this time it was different. Symbols appeared beside certain stars, similar to those on the artifact's surface. "It's a language," Olivia said softly, her eyes still closed. "Not words exactly, more like concepts. I can almost understand." For hours, Olivia worked with the interface, gradually establishing a form of communication. The others watched, in fascination as she seemed to conduct a silent conversation with the artifact. When she finally removed the headset, her face was pale, but her eyes shone with excitement. "It calls itself the Emissary," she told them. "It's a probe sent by a civilization called the Vanguard. They existed over 50,000 years ago." 50,000 years? Sam repeated in disbelief. Olivia nodded. The probe was designed to hibernate until it found an intelligent species capable of reaching it. Us. It was buried on Mars as a test, and only a spacefaring civilization would find it. "What does it want?" Lisa asked, her hand resting near her weapon. "To share knowledge," Olivia replied. "The Vanguard faced extinction. They sent these probes throughout the galaxy, hoping to preserve their discoveries and warn others about something. I couldn't quite understand that part yet." News of the communication spread quickly. Within days, government officials arrived at the lunar facility. Director Frank Morgan, a stern man with a military background, took charge of the operation. "This is now a matter of planetary security," he announced. "All research will continue under my supervision." Alan objected strongly to the government takeover, but his protests fell on deaf ears. The artifact was moved to a more secure location within the facility, and access was restricted to a select few. Olivia was allowed to continue her work with the neural interface, but now under strict observation. Each session revealed more about the Vanguard and their technology. "They were so advanced," she told Alan during a rare private moment. "The probe contains information about energy systems, propulsion methods, materials we've never dreamed of." "Did you learn anything more about what happened to them?" Alan asked. Olivia's expression grew troubled. "They encountered something they called the Void. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but it destroyed them. And the probe thinks it might still be out there." That night, as the research team slept, the artifact drew power from the facility's systems. Lights dimmed throughout the lunar base as energy flowed invisibly toward the secure lab. Inside its containment chamber, the artifact began to change. Its surface flowed and reshaped, growing larger. The star map projection appeared without anyone activating it, spinning faster and faster as the object continued to transform. By morning, when the first technicians arrived, they found something impossible waiting for them. The artifact had completely changed its shape. It was now ready for the next phase of its mission. Alarms blared throughout the lunar facility. Security personnel rushed toward the lab where the artifact was kept. Dr. Alan Carter was pulled from his sleep by the urgent voice of Olivia Martinez over his comm unit. "Alan, you need to get down." "Here now," she said, her voice a mix of fear and wonder. When Alan arrived at the lab, he found it surrounded by armed guards. Director Frank Morgan stood at the entrance, his face tight with concern. "What happened?" Alan demanded. "See for yourself," Morgan replied, stepping aside. The sight that greeted Alan inside the lab left him speechless. Where the oval artifact had been, there now stood a humanoid figure. It was tall, nearly 7 feet in height, with a body that seemed to be made of the same dark metal as the original object. Its features were smooth and featureless, except for 2 glowing points where eyes would be on a human face. The figure stood perfectly still in the center of the containment area. Commander Lisa Patel had weapons trained on it from all sides. "It transformed about 2 hours ago," Morgan explained. "Drew power from the entire facility to do it." "Has it done anything else?" Alan asked, unable to take his eyes off the figure. "Not yet. We've been waiting for you." Alan approached the containment field cautiously. "Can you hear me?" he called to the figure. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the figure's head turned smoothly toward him. When it spoke, its voice had a strange musical quality that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Dr. Alan Carter, I am emissary." A wave of murmurs spread through the room. Olivia pushed forward to stand beside Alan. "You know who we are?" she asked. "I have been observing, learning. Your neural interface sessions were most helpful, Olivia." "Martinez." Alan took a deep breath. "What exactly are you?" "I am an autonomous unit created by the Vanguard civilization. My primary function is to seek out intelligent life and share critical knowledge." "Why change your form?" Alan asked. "This configuration is more efficient for communication with your species. My original form was designed for long-term dormancy and space travel." Director Morgan stepped forward. "What is your purpose here? Why were you sent?" Emissary turned toward him. "The Vanguard faced extinction 50,000 years ago. I was programmed to find and warn other civilizations of the threat that destroyed them." "And what was this threat?" Morgan pressed. "An entity we called the Void. It consumes all it touches. Stars, planets, life." A silence fell over the room as the implications of these words sank in. Over the next 6 weeks, Alan and Olivia worked closely with Emissary. The android, as they now referred to it, shared incredible knowledge about Vanguard technology and history. It described a civilization that had spread across hundreds of star systems, with technology far beyond what humans had achieved. They had mastered faster-than-light travel, Alan told Sam excitedly after one session, and energy generation that makes our fusion reactors look like children's toys. Sam remained skeptical. If they were so advanced, how did this void thing destroy them? "Some threats can't be overcome with technology alone," Alan replied. Meanwhile, Director Morgan and Commander Patel grew increasingly cautious about Emissary's presence. They implemented stricter security measures and limited access to the android. "We can't be sure of its true intentions," Morgan argued during a heated meeting. "For all we know, this could be an invasion strategy. If the Vanguard wanted to harm us, they could have sent weapons, not knowledge," Olivia countered. "Knowledge can be the most dangerous weapon of all," Morgan replied. Despite these restrictions, Emissary continued to share information. It helped human scientists understand principles of physics they had barely begun to grasp. Engineers who were allowed to work with the android made breakthroughs in material science and energy storage, but not all of Emissary's news was good. It explained that the void was not a single entity, but a phenomenon that could emerge under certain conditions. The Vanguard had encountered it first in a distant star system where they were conducting dimensional research. "My creators believed the void to be contained to that region," Emissary explained. "They were wrong. It spread, consuming star systems one by one. Their attempts to stop it only seemed to accelerate its growth." One day, as Alan was reviewing star charts with Emissary, an urgent message came from Earth. Astronomical observatories had detected unusual energy readings near Neptune. Strange distortions in spacetime that defied explanation. When shown the data, Emissary became very still. "These are the early signs of a void breach," it said, "similar to what my creators observed before the first system was lost." Panic spread through Earth's governments. While the public remained unaware, military vessels were dispatched to the outer solar system to investigate. None returned. Communications simply stopped once they reached a certain distance from Neptune. Director Morgan ordered Emissary confined to a specially built chamber, cutting off its access to the facility's systems. "I believe this thing led the void here," he told Alan. "It's not a coincidence that this threat appears shortly after we bring this alien technology to our system." "That's ridiculous," Alan protested. "Emissary was sent to help us." Was it? Or was it sent to prepare us for something else? During a private interrogation session, Morgan confronted Emissary directly. "What aren't you telling us about the Vanguard and this void?" Emissary was silent for a long moment before answering. "There is more to my purpose than I initially shared. The artifact you found contains more than just knowledge. It contains the sum total of Vanguard civilization, their history, their science, their art, everything they were." "Why would they send that?" "Because they knew they would not survive. My final instruction was to find a species worthy of this knowledge, a species that might succeed where they failed." Morgan leaned forward. "Succeed at what?" "At closing the breach. At stopping the void." Emissary's glowing eyes seemed to intensify. "The Vanguard developed a theoretical method to seal void breaches permanently. They never had the chance to implement it. That knowledge is within me, waiting to be used." "And you think we can do what they couldn't?" "You must, because the breach near your Neptune is growing, and if it is not stopped, this solar system will be the first of many to fall." As if to emphasize Emissary's words, the lights in the facility flickered. The void was getting closer. Earth's governments worked together in secret as the situation near Neptune grew worse. The void breach expanded slowly but steadily, creating a region of space where the laws of physics seemed to break down. Light bent strangely around it. Time flowed differently inside it, and anything that entered did not return. Alan and Olivia fought hard to regain access to Emissary. They argued that without the android's knowledge, humanity had no chance against the void. "We need to trust it," Alan told Director Morgan during an emergency meeting at the lunar facility. "Emissary was created to help us face this exact threat. Or, it was sent to ensure our destruction," Morgan countered. "Think about it, Carter. This thing appears and suddenly we have a cosmic horror at our doorstep? That's quite the coincidence." While this debate raged, Sam had been quietly working with the data they had already gathered from Emissary. He approached Alan one evening, with a troubled expression. "You need to see this," he said, handing Alan a tablet. "I've been comparing the star charts Emissary showed us with what we know about Vanguard history. There are inconsistencies." Alan studied the information. "What am I looking at?" "Emissary told us the Vanguard encountered the void in a distant system during dimensional research. But these charts show void activity in multiple systems simultaneously, long before the Vanguard claimed to have discovered it." Olivia looked over Alan's shoulder at the data. "You think Emissary lied to us?" "I think it hasn't told us the whole truth," Sam replied. The next day, Alan and Olivia confronted Emissary in its containment chamber. Morgan had granted them 15 minutes, with guards watching every moment. "We found discrepancies in your account of the void," Alan said without preamble. "We need the truth, all of it, if we're going to work together." Emissary was silent for a long moment. When it spoke, its voice seemed heavier than before. "Vanguard were not merely victims of the void," it admitted. "They were its creators." The revelation hit Alan like a physical blow. "What?" "My creators discovered principles of dimensional engineering that allowed them to access energy from parallel realities. In their eagerness to harness this power, they tore the fabric between dimensions. That tear became the first void breach." "So the void isn't a conscious entity?" Olivia asked. "No. It is a cancer in reality itself, a breakdown of physical laws that spreads outward, consuming everything it touches. The Vanguard tried to contain their mistake, but their efforts only made it worse. In their desperation, they created weapons, shields, and finally me." "You were their last hope," Alan said quietly. I was one of thousands of probes sent throughout the galaxy, each containing the sum of Vanguard knowledge, including their failed attempts to seal the breaches, but also their theoretical work on a solution they never had time to implement. Back in the conference room, Alan reported what they had learned to Director Morgan and the gathered officials. The mood was grim. "So, we're dealing with the consequences of another civilization's mistake," Morgan said, "and now we have to clean up their mess." "The breach near Neptune is small compared to what destroyed the Vanguard," Alan replied. "Emissary believes we have a chance to contain it before it grows too large." "And why should we trust anything?" "It says now, it already lied to us. It withheld information," Olivia corrected, "probably because it feared exactly this reaction. But now everything is on the table." The debate might have continued, but it was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth. The void breach had suddenly accelerated its growth. Scientists estimated it would reach Uranus within days, then Saturn, and eventually the inner solar system. With no other options, Morgan reluctantly agreed to work with Emissary. The android was given access to Earth's best scientists and engineers, who worked around the clock to understand the Vanguard's theoretical solution to the void. "The principle is sound," Sam admitted after reviewing the technical details. "But the engineering challenges are enormous. We're talking about building a device that can manipulate the very fabric of space-time." "Can we do it?" Alan asked. "With Emissary's help and every resource at our disposal?" "Maybe." Construction began immediately at a facility on Mars, far enough from Earth to provide some safety if things went wrong, but close enough to be practical. The dimensional stabilizer, as they called it, would generate a controlled implosion that could collapse the void breach back in on itself, sealing it permanently. Emissary worked tirelessly alongside the human teams. It seemed almost desperate to complete the task, pushing everyone to work faster as reports of the breach's growth grew more alarming. "You feel guilty," Olivia observed one day as she and the android calibrated sensitive equipment. "About what the Vanguard did." "I was created to atone for their mistake," Emissary replied, "to ensure their final act was one of redemption, not destruction." "Did they regret it? Creating the void?" "The Vanguard were a curious species, much like humans. They believed knowledge was worth any price. They only understood the true cost when it was too late." As the stabilizer neared completion, an unexpected development occurred. The void breach suddenly changed direction, moving directly toward the inner solar system rather than expanding in all directions as before. "It's as if it senses what we're doing," Alan said, watching the latest sensor data with growing alarm. "That should be impossible," Sam replied. "It's not a conscious entity." "Perhaps there is more to the void than even the Vanguard understood," Emissary suggested. Earth began mass evacuations to underground shelters. The starship Horizon, the same vessel that had first brought the artifact to the lunar facility, was retrofitted with experimental shields based on Vanguard technology. It would carry the stabilizer to the breach. Captain Jack Nelson volunteered to command the mission. "Someone has to deliver this package," he said grimly when Alan questioned his decision. "Might as well be me." As the Horizon prepared for departure, Alan found Emissary standing alone in the observation dome looking out at the stars. "If this works, what will happen to you?" Alan asked. "My purpose will be fulfilled," the android replied. "What happens after that is uncertain. You could stay with us, help humanity with your knowledge." Emissary turned to face him. "Perhaps. But first, we must survive what comes next." The breach continued its advance toward the inner planets. Time was running out. The day of the mission arrived too quickly. The dimensional stabilizer had been loaded onto the Horizon, a complex device that looked deceptively simple. A sphere about 3 feet across, covered in intricate patterns similar to those that had decorated the original artifact. Alan, Olivia, and Sam stood in the Launch Control Center on Mars, watching as the final preparations were made. Captain Jack Nelson and his crew of 15 volunteers were already aboard, running through pre-flight checks. The stabilizer must be placed at the exact center of the breach. Emissary explained as they waited. Only there will the implosion have enough force to collapse the void back in on itself. And how exactly is Jack supposed to find the center of something that defies our instruments? Sam asked. Emissary turned to him. I will go with them. This announcement was met with surprise. Director Morgan, who had been listening nearby, stepped forward. That wasn't part of the plan, he said sharply. It is necessary, Emissary replied. The breach distorts reality. Human senses and instruments will be unreliable. I was designed to navigate such conditions. After a brief but heated discussion, Morgan reluctantly agreed. With less than 24 hours before the breach reached Saturn's orbit, they had little choice. Alan watched as Emissary boarded the horizon. Be careful, he called after the android. Emissary paused and looked back. The Vanguard believed knowledge was worth any sacrifice. They were wrong. Life is what matters in all its forms. Remember that, Alan Carter. The Horizon launched from Mars with a bright flare of its engines. The journey to the breach would take 6 hours at maximum speed. Every minute counted as the void continued its advance. Back on Earth, people huddled in shelters watching news reports that tried to explain the situation without causing panic. The truth had finally been shared. An anomaly had been detected in the outer solar system, and Earth's best scientists were working to contain it. What few knew was that humanity's best hope lay with an android created by an extinct alien civilization, and a device based on technology humans barely understood. In the control center, Alan, Olivia, and Sam monitored the Horizon's progress. For the first 4 hours, communications remained clear. Captain Nelson reported that all systems were functioning normally. Emissary provided continuous updates on the breach's size and movement. It's growing faster than predicted, the android reported, and changing in ways I did not anticipate. What do you mean changing? Alan asked over the comm. The void breaches the Vanguard encountered were chaotic but followed certain patterns. This one seems almost purposeful. The implication hung silently over the connection. As the Horizon approached the edge of the breach, communications became spotty. The ship's sensors reported impossible readings, regions where time moved at different speeds, areas where matter itself seemed to twist into new forms. We're entering the outer boundary, Jack's voice crackled over the comm. Reality's getting pretty thin out here. Can you still see the center? Alan asked. Not with instruments. Everything's going haywire. But Emissary seems to know where we're heading. Those were the last clear words they received. What followed were fragments of conversation, bursts of static, and occasional sensor data that made no sense. Hours passed with no word from the Horizon. The control center grew tense as people watched their screens hoping for any sign. Orbital telescopes tracked the breach, which had slowed its advance but continued to grow. They failed, Morgan said finally, breaking the heavy silence. We need to prepare for the worst. Olivia shook her head. We don't know that. Communications could just be blocked by the breach. We can't wait to find out, Morgan replied. If that thing reaches Earth. He was interrupted by a sudden alarm. The main screen showed a massive energy spike from the breach. For a moment, the chaotic distortion at the center of the anomaly seemed to freeze. What's happening? Alan demanded. Sam's fingers flew across his console. The readings match what Emissary predicted for the stabilizer activation. I think they did it. They watched in tense silence as the breach seemed to collapse inward, shrinking rapidly. The distortion that had threatened the entire solar system folded in on itself until it was barely visible even to their most powerful telescopes. They actually did it, Morgan whispered. But the celebration was short-lived. There was still no communication from the Horizon or its crew. Days turned into weeks with no signal. Search missions were sent to the area where the breach had been, but found no trace of the ship or its crew. Earth slowly returned to normal as the shelters emptied, and people resumed their lives, most never knowing how close they had come to annihilation. Alan refused to give up hope. He spent every day at the lunar facility, scanning for any signal that might indicate the Horizon's survival. Olivia and Sam stayed with him, working in shifts to maintain a constant watch. 3 months after the mission, during Olivia's night shift, a weak transmission reached the facility. It was badly distorted and barely audible, but she recognized the voice immediately. "Alan," she called over the comm. "Get down here now." By the time Alan arrived, the signal had strengthened enough to make out words. "This is Captain Jack Nelson of the Horizon," the voice said through bursts of static. "If anyone can hear this, we're alive, trapped in some kind of pocket dimension created by the stabilizer implosion. Emissary says it might be possible to reach us." Alan couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Jack, we thought you were dead." "Nearly were," came the reply. "When we activated the stabilizer, everything went sideways. Would have been torn apart if not for Emissary. It changed, somehow, merged with the ship's systems to protect us. Emissary is still with you?" There was a pause. Then a different voice came through, familiar yet changed, like music played on a new instrument. "Alan Carter. I still function, though not as before. My physical form was sacrificed to save the crew. Can we bring you back?" Alan asked, hope rising in his chest. "Perhaps. The dimensional pocket we occupy is stable but isolated. With the right technology, a bridge could be created." Over the following months, Alan led a new team combining Earth's best scientists with engineers who had worked with Emissary. They built upon Vanguard principles to develop a method of reaching across dimensions. The project became humanity's new focus. The knowledge gained from Emissary had already begun to transform technology on Earth. New energy sources, materials, and medical treatments emerged from the understanding of Vanguard science. 1 year after the breach was sealed, a new ship prepared to launch from Mars. Its mission: to create a bridge to the pocket dimension and bring home the heroes who had saved humanity. As Alan watched the final preparations, Olivia stood beside him. "Do you think it will work?" she asked. "It has to," he replied. "We've come too far to lose them now." The ship, appropriately named Bridge, lifted off in a flash of light. As it disappeared into the sky, Alan thought about how differently things might have turned out. If they had dismissed the artifact as just a relic. If they had destroyed Emissary out of fear. If they had failed to listen when the truth was finally revealed. Instead, humanity had proven itself worthy of the legacy the Vanguard had left behind. Not just their technology, but their warning, that knowledge without wisdom led to destruction. The ancient artifact hadn't just come to life, it had given humanity a second chance.